Hi there, and welcome back to another edition of ScaleUp Radio, the podcast inspired by the Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System and designed to make navigating our scale-up journeys that little bit easier by learning from others' experiences. I'm Kevin Brent, and in today's episode, we explore the inspiring journey of Seán Brickell, the founder of the luxury watch brand Edward Christopher. And we discover how Seán transitioned from being a disillusioned journalist to a visionary entrepreneur, creating exquisite watches that do more than just tell time. They give back, donating 10% of profits to children's charities. And we'll dive into the challenges of pricing and marketing a new luxury brand in a crowded market, the lessons learned from a failed partnership, and Seán's strategies for success. You're going to want to make sure that you don't miss any future episodes of ScaleUp Radio, and the best way to do that is to subscribe to ScaleUp Radio wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. And you can also nominate a guest for ScaleUp Radio if you know someone with an interesting scale-up story, and you can find out how in the show notes below. For now, join us as we uncover how passion, philanthropy, and perseverance can build a brand that aims to have a lasting legacy. Stay tuned for my conversation with Seán. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio, and I think we're going to have a fun one this time. I'm delighted to be with Seán Brickell, and he is the founder of Edward Christopher. So, Seán, welcome to ScaleUp Radio.
Kevin, thank you very much.
Good. It's a delight to have you on. So, Edward Christopher, what's that all about?
Okay, so Edward Christopher is a British luxury watch brand, and what we produce fully custom made. I mean, fully custom made, not white labeled that people pretend is a lovely watch, which some of them can look like, but underneath is a different matter. Fully custom made luxury watches in a range of strong colors to suit people's clothing and moods, varying clothing and moods, stronger colors than almost any other watch brand. And we also, which distinguishes us as well, we are donating 10% of the profits to children and young people in need around the world, which, as I understand it, is more than any other watch brand globally, because Edward Christopher is named after two brave and modest British men called Edward and Christopher, and who each saved a child's life. In the case of one of them, it cost him his life, and that was my great uncle Edward, after whom I'm also named. My middle name is Edward, and I've named after him, which I'm very proud of. And he fought in the trenches in the First World War, somehow survived that, came back after the war, dived into a freezing river to save a boy who was drowning, saved the boy's life. But because of the privations and the challenges he'd been through in the trenches on the Western Front in the Great War, as his generation called it, the Great War, and the impact it had on his health, he got influenza and died.
Right.
And he probably would have known what would have happened if he dived into that river, sort of man he was. The other person is Christopher, my father, who was always persistently brave in a variety of situations. And I saw him, I remember it vividly, save a girl's life in the middle of nowhere. No medical attention could have got there in time. And he bought me, my father, Christopher, bought me my first watch, age 10, Seiko, quartz with a nice bracelet, and I felt so grown up. I was like, I must be a real man. I have a proper watch, and I've always had a fascination with watches. My maternal grandfather gave me his very cherished gold, 18-karat gold half hunter watch, pocket watch with a sort of red, yellow, and white gold chain and agate fob. And he was given that when he retired as a sales director from Firestone Tires back in the 50s, 60s, whenever it was, and another war veteran, and from the Second World War. And that was one of his prides and joys. And I've always loved watches. And it got to the point where I thought, I want to do something with watches, but I don't just want to do just watches. I want to combine both the charitable and commercial and creative elements. So, because a lot of people think, right, when I retire, not everybody thinks, but people who do maybe think and even do this, the few that do it, say, right, I'm now retired, I'm now going to contribute. Da-da! There might be a fanfare. There might not. And you think, well, fine, but that's grand. But how are you going to contribute and why? But when will that happen? And that could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And a lot can happen in 5 hours, let alone 5 years. And I thought, well, why not combine the charitable element with the commercial element? So I also wanted a business that could be run from anywhere in the world, where you're creating a beautiful product with beautiful packaging that also in beautiful colors that has a beautiful purpose. So again, it's creating a commercial legacy, in terms of the business, that I hope will last a long time, a very long time, a creative legacy in terms of the products, and thirdly, a charitable legacy. And a few watch competitors, they give 1% of their net profits to charity, which to me, forgive me, sounds a bit like tokenism. You're going to do it, go big or go home, and mean it. And I didn't want to do anything that's token. And yes, it's great for the brand that you're doing that, but you have to really want to do it. People say, oh, yeah, but you'll make less money. I said, I don't need a fleet of 24 Bentleys outside my 50-bedroom mansion. And I don't, by the way, either. You don't need that. I really don't need that. But I prefer when my time comes to have thought, well, actually, I have contributed to, or my business has made a real tangible as well as an intangible impact to children, young people in need around the world who really need it. So in the case of the charities we're contributing to, Prince's Trust International, that help young people from very challenging and sometimes disturbing backgrounds to, as they put it, to live, learn and earn, and Kidscape, an anti-bullying, award-winning anti-bullying charity that helps children deal with bullying, overcome bullying. And I think those two, all the research I did into various charitable causes, and I've always raised money for children's charities, whether I'm doing an expedition or running a marathon or cycling from one end of Britain to the other. And this is my way of doing something that I really care about. So it adds that fuel, that fire in the business, the perception of the business, but also from my point of view as a founder and owner, is when you have those challenging and dark days, and I certainly have had and do on occasions have them, it's beginning to get going, but you have this, my God, am I doing the right thing? Am I spending the right amount of money there in marketing? Am I doing, should I have done this? Should I have done that? And what about the pricing? I mean, I'll talk about that later. I've torn myself apart on the pricing because there's so many factors to consider. And therefore, when you think about that, you think at some point, that there'll be a growing number of children, young people who will benefit directly from what my business is offering a world. So the world, the countries we export to, so it's a global business. And another thing about it, Christopher, is because of the nature of the business, it's an e-commerce business. They were looking for distributors, and people can come to events we're featuring at and showing at, and even meet me in person, or our watch assemblers in Winchester in England to meet them as well in person, just to look at the watches which people want to do. That's fantastic. That's great. But then they also, I think from a customer's point of view, they're thinking that we're not just investing in a watch, we're investing in much more than a watch. We're investing in the life of a child and a young person who really needs it.
Right.
And there's a much more personal, poignantly personal reason why I started this brand. And that is this, that I really wanted to be a dad, and not just for societal or familial reasons or even pressures or expectations. I love kids. I really want to be a dad. I thought it through. I thought, yeah, I mean, I love kids. I've worked with young criminals in their teenage years in the roughest parts of South London, who've been armed robbers and GBHs and all the rest of it. And I've gone to their family homes, if you can call it a family, and have been physically threatened by, an angry stepdad who doesn't want to handle his son, so I had to deal with him, all this sort of stuff, because I cared about making a difference. And when you do, it's so empowering. It's almost better than, like this morning, I was just cleaning up the breakfast and there's a lovely ka-ching noise on my phone. Like, yes, another sale. It's not always like that, by the way, when I'm doing breakfast. Otherwise, I would never stop eating it just in case. And I would be the size of a double-decker. And it's a great sound and noise. I thought, great, fantastic. And I love that. It's really satisfying, as any business owner will know.
Yes.
The thought that when you're doing something and you're helping children, young people who have very challenging and if not traumatic and sometimes terrifying lives and the situations they find themselves in, and little to no hope, and you have given them a scintilla or even a substantial amount of hope, in tangible as well as intangible terms, that is actually more satisfying. Now, I'm not picking myself as a do-gooder, but I do, as I get older, I want to contribute more. Because if you're really driven, you're an A-type person, certainly an entrepreneur, and you will understand this from all the people you've met, Kevin, and the people you deal with and interview. It's very easy, and sometimes you have to be very focused, like a machine, almost too self-focused. And actually, when you step back thinking, because I think when your time comes, to leave this earth, you have to ask yourself three questions. Have I lived fearlessly, feelingly, and fruitfully? 2, have I loved and been loved warmly and wholeheartedly? And the third question to ask yourself is, have I left a positive and life-enhancing legacy of which I and those who truly count with me can be proud? Right. And if you can answer yes, and ideally a resounding yes, an honest yes to those three, you've lived a really good life. And at least in my book. Now, some people think, no, I don't want to contribute. I just want to contribute to me. I'm into self-service and not public service. And fair enough, that's their call. And so that's really important. That purpose behind the business isn't just about profit. It's also about
excellent
charitable as well. And that, to me, is what floats my boat. And I prefer to make less money. So instead of going, I don't know, staying in a 5-star hotel for 1 month, I stay in it for 2 or 3 weeks, for instance, or though I won't stint on a fine homemade chocolate fudge cake, that would just be wrong. You do have a sweet tooth. So
there are limits. Yeah,
steady on. This is England, have a care, you know.
So you've dropped a hint about your background. You know, what got you to this point? You mentioned you mentioned looking after some pretty challenged children and having some pretty dodgy situations. So what was that all about? What were you involved in at that point?
I think, I've always wanted, it's always that inner father of me, that paternal element. And I thought one day I hope I'll be a father. Now, the closest I got to being a dad was a late miscarriage, and that's it.
That's it.
And so when my time comes, I don't want to see it as a regret, but it will make me sad. But that said, you make the best of what you've got. And I've got 3 gorgeous nephews who are all very different. They love and adore me as I love and adore them. And I've said to them, I will always do what I can to support you, encourage you, and protect you, and always have and always will. And so that's why I set a mission with Edward Christopher, and I'll get back to why I did all this, but I've set a mission with Edward Christopher to help 1 million children, young people in need around the world by creating beautiful watches and a community, and even have an Edward Christopher Foundation, which helps young people get into organizations to start businesses they wouldn't otherwise. So that's part of the plan further down the road, and also to double, even treble the amount of money donated to the charities the business supports. But why did I get into it? I suppose it's linked to the fact I wanted to do. It's very easy to be selfish when you're driven, and I've always been very driven. And why have I been driven? Honestly, and by the way, discussing the stuff about the late miscarriage and everything else, as a man, a lot of men, heterosexual men, don't feel they can. They don't feel weak, and it might be unmanly if you admit a weakness or a setback. But life is about setbacks, successes, ideally more successes and setbacks in business as in our personal lives. And so, but at school, when I was sent away to boarding school when I was 8, but I was told I was, and I quote, very wild at a primary school. I was asked to leave. I think it's a polite English term.
You weren't just wild, you were very wild.
Yeah. It's a major upgrade, that's right. And I couldn't believe my luck. I thought I had a bigger badge that glowed after dark.
Is that one step down from feral, or is that?
Yeah, it probably is, actually. This is England, so people like to understate things. So God knows what they really thought it meant. But and so I went to a few schools. So when I was sent away to boarding school when I was 8, I couldn't really read or write or spell or anything like that. And I was, throughout school, I was made to feel I wasn't that clever. I had bursts of acceptable academic capability. But I remember I had a few teachers who wrote me off, including my last school, my last year. And not many of the boys in the house liked him, and with good reason. His son actually is a good bloke, but forgive me if he's ever listens to this. But he remember one evening he sat me down and he was putting me down. So I kind of teased him very gently. And he said, I remember it now vividly. It was dark outside. There was beautiful lighting in his study. There's one thing he could do well. He couldn't manage boys or people very well. Had no interpersonal skills. And an odd way of eating, as if he had wanted to glue the face his face, the plate he was eating off, but be that you know, and there's another thing, but he could do lighting well, at least his wife did. And that was the only one redeeming factor. His study was beautifully lit and quite a low, soothing light. But the message was quite savage. Not quite, it was savage, it was severe, and it was shocking, and it was unacceptable. He said, you, Brickell, are going to be a failure in life. You're going to fail. You're not going to do very well in life. And a whole stack of other things related to that. And I remember saying, sir, I said, well, I think you're wrong. I have a great pleasure in proving you're wrong. And I really will. And I will come back here and show you up and show you you're wrong. And he was still sneering. There was real venom in his eyes and his face. And I thought, what a git. And I actually thought something much ruder, but I'm aware that people with delicate sensibilities listening to this. Yeah. And I think, no, he is feral. He's not just very wild. he's wooed and riotous. So, and I had people sort of writing me off, and that kind of drove me. And I thought, right, little so-and-so, I'm going to show you. And there's a whole stack of stuff to do, send away to boarding school and the impact it has on you, which is giving me more of an edge, more of a drive, maybe a bit more extreme, but there are prices to pay for that psychologically, emotionally, and other ways. And it drove me, and I thought, and I wanted a life. I decreed when I left school, and I felt like the shackles are off. 10 years at British boarding schools, most of them Catholic, you get less for murder and manslaughter. And I thought, I said to myself, I'm never going to be an if-only person. I'm never going to, if only I'd asked that woman out, if only I'd gone for that job, if only I'd started this or gone on that adventure. And I didn't want a life that was restrained and doused in, just restrained really by societal niceties that with little to no risk. Now, obviously, trying to take a calculated risk, but yeah, I didn't want that. I wanted something. I look back and I think, look, not everything worked out. My God, the adventures you had, the person you became, the challenges you've had to overcome, and that is what's happened. So I've, I achieved what I set out to do in my first career, which I always wanted to be a journalist and a broadcaster. I was a TV news correspondent, newsreader for the networks regional, and also did orthodox and what I politely call unorthodox assignments for national newspapers in this country. So undercover infiltrations of, I was doing undercover expose of a multi-million-pound fraud. I had to infiltrate a swingers orgy for News of the World when they were still a functioning newspaper. Right. That was in Kent. Won't forget that in a hurry. But this isn't the day, Kevin, when swinging everybody, if you haven't swung, then, you haven't lived. I mean, but I was looking for handcuffs behind you. But sorry, just testing.
They're in the cupboard. Yeah,
fair enough. All 5 pairs of them. You've got to cover yourself. But seriously, back in the 90s, early 90s, that was it was forgotten. You couldn't do that. But it was a very secret underworld, and we had to have a cover story, and it was fascinating. And I thought, if these people want to do it, then it's good for them. But of course, it's this false, furiously fake morality of the red-top tabloid newspapers in the UK. But it made, the British love a bit of titillation. We see ourselves ostensibly, or people see us as sort of ostensibly quite a moral bunch, but underneath, behind the curtains, underneath the duvet covers, all sorts of bacchanalian, wild, wanton things go on. And you think, great, good for you. I hope it works.
So those of you that have tuned in late, may be wondering.
This is a business podcast discussion, but it's. But I love the adventure. So I've been held at gunpoint a few times in the course of my career. So once in the war in the former Yugoslavia, and that was interesting. And before I went there, and they said, do not go because there's a war on. I thought, I like a bit of excitement. I was in my mid-20s there. And they, and I tried to learn the Serbo-Croat phrase for Red Star Belgrade, a well-wicked football team. And he's not making this up, it's true. I can't remember it, but intriguingly, the guy who held me at gunpoint, he had the most enormous head. This is a train, I was on a train, and at some point we stopped in the middle of nowhere. This man, I remember him vividly, begging for his life, and his wife were dragged out to the middle of nowhere and, put it this way, didn't get back on. And so it was an ideal situation. And I somehow got on talking about football. I mean, his sauerkraut was excellent. His English was terrible. My sauerkraut was terrible. Only about 4 words, and most of them would have got me arrested. And I remember he started talking about Manchester United. And I'm not a football fan, I'm a rugby fan, but it cares about how you deal with that. And there have been other situations where you have people dropping concrete breeze blocks on your head. I was once sent out to do a ride with Combat 18 and National Front, and very violent. Mm. And bizarrely, they were throwing £1 coins from 30, 40 meters away. Now, £1 coin, when it hits you, like it did, but it hit some people. Yeah. It can cause some damage. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, wealthy bunch. Why can't you throw like a 10p piece or something? Might have just bounced off my ankles. And they sent me out with a photographer, gutsy guy called Dave, and one of his legs was false, it was wooden. And they were dropping concrete breeze blocks. He was a gutsy guy, and at some point we got between the riot squad police in their full gear and the Combat 18 National Front. And then it was like a battle from the 1800s. They all sort of merged, and it was hand-to-hand combat. We're in the midst of it. And I felt today, well, should take your leg off and give him a damn good wallop with it. And he was up for it. But he was hopping away, happily, very courageous. So you have all those surreal things. And yes, it's adventurous and all the rest of it. But I fell out of love with the media and news in particular. Because I was at the stormtrooper end of the media, hard news, and you see some shocking sights. One of my first assignments was I went to South Wales and Swansea in a very poor council estate, and days of foam-filled furniture, and these old prefab houses and flats went up like a Roman candle. And I remember seeing this 4-year-old girl, the charred remains of her being carried out in an open, not closed, open blanket. And I was like 19 or 20. And then I got to know her sister ran into this 7-degree heat to rescue her. A 12-year-old sister had the most horrific burns. And I went to see her 6 months later, almost vomited because her scarring was so shocking. And stuff like that. And you just, and you see the extremes and eccentricities of human nature as well as humans. And some of them are so sad, and some of them are, some are brilliant, some of them are bizarre, some of them are brutal and beastly. And it's that contrast, but it really gives you a different perspective on life. But in the end, it's partly because of the nature of the work, the people I work with. Newsrooms, particularly at the national level, are pretty, if I'm being too honest, being a pretty brutal places. It is not for the faint-hearted. Yeah. In the TV station, put it this way, people who didn't work in news, they worked, finance or marketing or HR, they wouldn't come into the newsroom unless they were accompanied by at least 1 or 2 people. It's like going to no-go areas for the police. It was like that. And I remember going to an event in St. James's Square in London, and a lot of business people there. And I thought, business, people in grey suits, it's very boring. And I was talking to these entrepreneurs, and I thought, my God, this is fascinating. I felt really enthused. This is a very weird sensation. And I was really inspired. And I cannot tell you how random that was, because the last thing in the world I would expect to become is a businessman or an entrepreneur. And I thought, this is a most unusual feeling. And I was feeling disillusioned. So I went to do one of these, what was then one of the top occupational psychology companies, who like the career psychologists, who you go in and they'd assess you as a person, your skill set. And you come out there and say, right,
you're very wild.
Yeah. And if not feral, but very wild. You need something that's very wild, but toned down a bit with better spelling. And at least better than when you were 8, actually 12. And so, and I spent the morning doing sort of psychometric and personality tests, and they found out I had a personality, but not one you can do much with. And then you go back, I watched a shocking film with Heather Graham, I remember that, and then went back 2 hours later, and these sessions may last 2 hours. Mine lasted 3 because I had a lot to ask and quite a bit to say, but particularly a lot to ask. And I remember it as if it was yesterday. And the woman said, you are a 10 out of 10 maverick. amongst other things. And she said, you put it this way, in terms of admin, forget it. You're very creative. In fact, you should be an entrepreneur and a professional speaker. And I thought, well, I can spell one of those. Even aged somewhere in my 30s. I thought, I remember feeling this great light it opened up from on high, going, Seán, this is your, because I was really lost. I was like going cold turkey professionally. If you've been a TV news correspondent, national newspaper reporter, you don't just, do some cozy casual job off that, because you've gone from something that's very unusual, and you've got to go to something quite normal and dowdy. You drive yourself mad. You think, what the hell's going on? And I thought, what do I do next? And I was really stuck and lost for a few years, because I saw you on BBC News or heard you on the Today programme on Radio 4, and I went, oh wow, exciting. I thought, not really, I can't stand it. I've had enough. And but it's about the perception of glamour. Well, they think it's glamorous. It's about the perception of glamour. And sometimes news in particular is not always glamorous, and both inside the newsroom and outside. So yeah, and I thought, okay, right, professional speaker sounds good. I can do that. And sounds really random. So I could talk for hours on this, forgive me. So I'll try and be as concise as possible, Kevin. But I did some research and found out that there was a professional speaker association in the UK. I called up the main man, this very dynamic, capable South African guy called Frank Furness. And he said, you should come on my courses. Something about, okay, come on. So I went to his course, and it was a 2-day course. And it was actually really good about how to be a professional speaker. Because in those days, you used to get paid, thousands of pounds to just to give a 45-minute keynote, walk away with it, have some sandwiches, shake hands, thanks very much, go home, bish, bash, bosh. Then things changed after a while. And at the end of it, like 20 or 25 of us there, and a diverse range of people. Anyway, in the end, he said, there's a big international convention of professional speakers from around the world. I want you to give a keynote speech. I thought, okay. And nobody else was asked, which went down really badly with them. So that my name was Mud. And the guy next to me, the straitjacket, his thing was doing something, a straitjacket, give him stage with a straitjacket. And that's somehow motivated people. He was particularly bitchy, but I remember that. But I thought, I don't care about him. You get back to the straitjacket. I'll suit a bit for you if you want. And I'm not making this up. Some really diverse people. Anyway, it led to other things. And then I would just speak for free at events. And then people would come and hear me. And how did I get business? So people would think, oh, you made us laugh, or it's a really interesting, because your background and the way I approach things was different to some corporate Johnny trainer, being, some corporate waller. And it was a very, the particular way of saying things, it was very sort of commonplace. And mine was quite quirky and slightly off the wall and just very different because the experience I had. So when I did training exercises in big corporates, I'd say, I get to do things no one had ever asked them to do in their life. Now, I said to them, look, none of this is illegal, sadly.
But it might be close.
Yeah. Feral, yes. Legal, no. It's going to be a theme here. He's a feral chocolate fudge cake eating loon. No, not a swivel-eyed loon. But anyway, I said, all the stuff I'm asking you to do, I've done in much more perilous situations than you on a regular basis. Trust me, what I'm asking you to do is tame. They go, oh my God. But it would be transformational on them as people and as professionals. I really enjoyed doing that. And I found it very creative. And so I was asked to speak in different parts of the world and give keynote speeches at events, external events, plus in-house corporates. And I chose in-house corporates as opposed to just doing, training for freelancers, whatever, because once you're in a big corporate, one, you can charge more. Two, once you're in, if they like you, they'll put you out to other bits of organizations. And three, the sandwich and the biscuits are better. And I thought this 3-point model is the way forward. Yeah. And that's one client, actually. They used to have this massive biscuit tin, glass one, by reception. But I worked out when I went for meetings there and sessions that a lot of the chocolate biscuits had gone by 11. So I always arranged my meetings before. So I'm not making it up, by the way.
And what sort of things are you getting them to do that's different?
Oh, I think so. It was really about communication. So communication, sort of street psychology. So as a journalist, you learn a lot. You learn from real life experience how to approach someone, depending on their their culture, their gender, their size, their everything, and reading them. And no one trains you. It's just instinct. And so I read up, I studied and got some qualifications. I thought, that explains why I didn't get my head staved in, or why, that explains why they tried to bob a grease block on my head. Right. And then try to stab me. That explains why, Okay. And I would get them, so how they approach people internally and externally. So I get them to go out, for instance, one of the exercises I did, I said, right, at the end of the first, after lunch on the first or the second day, depending on if it's a 2-day course or 1-day course, I say, right, here is, and I put them in pairs and I pick them carefully. And here is a nice box. Just open it up. It's a video camera, the microphone. I went, yes. What are we going to do with this? Film each other? Well, sort of, yes. What I want to do is go out into the street and go up to people you've never met. In brackets, you might never want to meet you again, but hopefully not the case. And I want you to find out something really delicate, intimate, and personal and poignant about them and their life, and see how quickly you can do it without getting slapped or arrested. And their face every time, like in the movies, you must be kidding. I went, yeah, and I'd given you the skills to do it. And you take it in turns. And I've got to say, that was just one of the exercises I did that apparently nobody had ever done before. But what came back, and the impact they had on most of them, those who actually dared, had the courage, and most of them did, was transformational. And because I thought, I can talk to anybody. It's one thing going to talk to a stranger, but talking with a camera, I do it all the time. Yep. It's quite another thing. And then to get something quite intimate, personal, not what's your favorite color, but then to get, and how you get there. So I'd given them the skills in terms of how to have the questions they ask, their body language, their physiognomy, the facial expression, all those different elements. And I've been testing it, not just giving theory, but practicing and testing these things out in the safe confines of the classroom. And so, yeah, I thought, well, let's apply those skills in other things and just get people to do things they hadn't thought about. Even when they were doing big sales pitches for multi-million-pound deals, and I think about the way they sat, in what order they sat, and I give them the sort of scenarios that could happen, unlikely to happen, but could happen, in some cases actually do happen, and how to deal with it psychologically, visually, physically, intellectually, in terms of tone of voice. And we went through all these scenarios. I throw stuff in and see how they coped. And I think people like the challenge.
So what as a business owner, what couple of things could you suggest to people if they're in those sort of maybe a really important client meeting, or what sort of things might you suggest?
I think one is, I'm not going to come all woo-woo, but is your energy. And yes, and some people will say, go into the toilet. We go, Simon Winner, and stretch out, which, can work, but not if that person you're meeting is in the toilet with you. So
that's just weird, yeah.
That's just weird, particularly if they haven't flushed or whatever. They're just washing their hands. Aren't you and I meeting? Oh, yeah, we are. Sorry, I was having a moment there. I was having what could have been a feral moment. And so, that's fine, but it's the energy you have. But the one thing I always think of, and there's research on this, is that a lot of coaches will say, no, and they'll talk like this for some odd reason. They go, imagine you're just awesome, throughout, and you're just brilliant, he loves you. Well, that isn't life or business. There is a chance someone will think, no, I don't like you, or I'm not sure I don't like your message, or they could be bored or distracted. So you need to think about all the great things that you're going to say and do, and imagine them reacting to that, but also imagine them if they don't like something. What happens if think of all the challenging, bizarre, and unpleasant things that could happen, and how you will react facially, verbally, in terms of your tone of voice, the words you use, physically, and how you're going to react. And the best way of imagining this is not in the first person, seeing it through your own eyes, but actually in the third person, as if you are watching you in that situation. Right. And you've got to really test yourself. And the good thing is, it's like, I call it mind movies. You just do it again and again and again in your head and mind, even out loud in the safety of your own home or private office. And so you're happy with that. I think that's a really cool thing, because then what the research shows, actually it's more effective than imagining everything's going to be bad, everything's going to be wonderful. it's invariably a mixture of the two. And so that's a useful thing. And also, I think the energy with which you walk in, not trying to try too hard. And I remember an old business mentor of mine said, and I love this, he said, don't sell, invite them to buy.
Okay.
And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I've wondered, I mean, my story sounds maybe at time, I hope, reasonably entertaining, educational up to a point, but I'll be honest with you, and I love dealing with people. I'm fascinated by people, personally, professionally, and I really enjoy that. But not everybody does. I'm actually not just an extrovert, I'm an introvert, so an ambivert, which sounds really ugly and just weird. Sounds like a range of dodgy double glazed windows. Oh yeah, it's got ambivert windows, But anyway, an ambivert, so I'm a mixture of the two. But sometimes I wonder, when you're really enthusiastic about your business, or if you're being honest with yourself, do you think, when does enthusiasm become eagerness that's gone a little too far? And I've asked myself that many times. I think sometimes maybe I'm trying a little too hard to, albeit with, we're speaking with oomph and passion and everything else, but when you're trying too hard, so it looks like you need the business, need the sale, need the engagement, the contract, whatever it might be.
And there's a similar adage in exiting companies, and when businesses are acquired, the best businesses are bought, not sold, is the adage, which is very, very, very similar. Yeah, if you have to go out touting your business for sale, probably not the best.
No, and something I heard the other day on a podcast, and this guy was talking about, when you're approaching somebody, a potential customer or whoever, or associate, have that sort of with me or without me energy. I'm going to do this. If you want to do it with me, because it would help maybe both of you, but certainly you as well as them, that's great. If you don't, it's still going to happen. I love that with me or without me energy. And I think that's a great way. And actually, hearing that has helped me perfect when I write an email to someone, and even the emails that go out to Edward Christopher customers and potential customers. I've tweaked them slightly. So that element, I hope, of the with me or without me, or with us or without us energy comes across. So you're not dismissive. Say, look, we're on a mission. We'd love to have you on board. If it's not for you, great. If it is, fantastic. If not, then so be it. So that's another key thing, I think. That,
all right. Good. So somehow we got to setting up a watch business.
Yeah, and the feral element you mentioned, I'm so glad I brought that up at the beginning. Yeah, but then between journalism, the professional speaking, and watch business, set up a corporate video production company with a former colleague of mine, and had to close that partnership, or at least part the partnership, because we had a different view on life and business, which was tricky, but had to be done.
So what did you learn about that?
You can work with someone in one environment and you think, this guy is very capable and savvy, but then you work them in a different environment, say, as in a business, and then you find something and you find out what they're like as a person. You've got an idea of who they are as a person because you work with them, but when it's your own business, it's different. There's the ambition there. And also you find out where people are on the integrity spectrum.
Okay.
And also just ways of working. So like the way you dress, if you've got to go and meet a customer and that you've got to be suited and booted out of respect to them, yes, it makes you look better out of respect to the way they turn up for meetings. And you're dressed in something, like a sort of dodgy leather jacket and a shirt that was once ironed in the 60s, and not by someone who knew what they were doing or even had an iron.
Or a purple sweatshirt with a white branded logo on it.
Yeah, I should point out I am wearing, because I thought I must go to the gym because I'm talking to Kevin. I must appear youthful and full of vigor. And I have because purple is the Edward Christopher color, and I actually have the Edward Christopher logo on the front left and on the back the domain name. So I'm wearing it because I don't have a chance, because I think I'm wearing Kevin. He looks very sort of soigné and elegant. So, and I'll go for that grunge look, not quite feral, the very wild purple sweatshirt top look. So thank God this is audio. And so yeah, it's those sort of things. And I realized that there are certain things in that situation. There's one thing that happened, which, put it this way, if I'd employed, that's what the business was for obvious reasons, if I employed someone, which we did on a contract basis, to do what they were meant to do, and they'd done what this person had done, I would have fired them on the spot without paying. I was bloody angry. I mean, appalled. And I thought, right, that's it. It'd been a build-up, and I thought, this is no good. We're both involved with this business, and we're working with some, again, I have to be very careful what I say, working with an organization deals with some very profoundly disturbed and damaged people.
Right. And
that made me even angrier that it had been done. They should have done for anybody, let alone them. And
so how did you
had our own, assignments and everything else. So I thought that was tricky. But then you can put your head in the sand. It just gets worse and worse, and it eats away at you because you haven't got the courage to address it. And that person, came to stay with me. I said, right, we need to have a chat, and it was polite but slightly awkward. But they're in a robust spirit, and on they went and everything else, but not an ideal situation. So I think it's true. You've got to find someone who compliments you in a professional level, but also compliments your values. That's if you know what your values are. Yeah. Not what you think they ought to be, but what they generally are, and if they're good values. And you actually get on well, you can trust them. That trust, not just where they are, the way they are with you, but the way they are with other people, colleagues and potential customers. And that is so important, and not to rush into things. Oh, yeah, it's great. You're having like a beer, or in my case, a cup of tea and a cake, and life is, we'd be great together. That initial enthusiasm, like a relationship. Oh, you're great. You look gorgeous. Let's go out with each other. But then you find out they're a chainsaw maniac who dismembered 4 of their previous partners, and only 2 of them have been found. You think, all right, started so well, you look great, but actually you're a nutter. And so I'm not saying,
there was a little bit too much detail in that. It's almost like you had somebody in mind that literally had.
But luckily their chainsaw's not working. That's why I'm still here.
So you've clearly, with the journalist background and everything else, you've clearly had to handle a few awkward conversations over time, including that one. And of course, as business owners, that's one of the things that we have to do occasionally, with whether it be with team members or whoever. What's your couple of key tips for dealing with awkward conversations?
Before you do anything, to think about why you need to have the conversation. It may sound really obvious, but to think really honestly, to be brutally honest about them. Yes, that's easier, but the hard thing is being brutally honest about you and what the motivations are. Is it fair? Is it a unacceptable prejudice you might have for whatever reason? And to be really clear on that, and not just in the short term, but going back in terms of history as well that you've had with them, but also where you and, in this case, maybe your business are going, and are they aligned with that? And once you're really clear on that and have written it down, then you've got to think about sort of person they are. So will they burst into tears, or will they produce their chainsaw? To go back to hopefully not. Never take one into the office or to meetings. But seriously, I suppose it's thinking, how are they going to react? And you've got to think of what you're going to say, how you're going to open, but also what their objections are, how you will deal with it verbally, emotionally, facially, physically, depending on what they say and how they react. So think of the environment you're in. You go somewhere pleasant and there's no barrier between you. So you're side by and next to each other at right angles, for instance, a coffee shop, if that's your thing. Going for a walk is probably a good one. Think of the environment in which you have that conversation. And just a warm, calm honesty. I used to say to my clients in my sort of training, coaching, speaking business, I said, imagine when you're presenting or dealing with someone in a business situation, you have a look on your face of warm authority. You have the authority, but you're not austere. There's not you don't have an austere look on your face. There's a warmth there. But so you're approachable, but also you have that acceptably serious, authoritative look about you. So you're not imposing, but you're more engaging. And yes, and to practice if need be, if you don't know your physiognomy and how you operate non-verbally, if you're familiar with it, because you're doing it all the time, great. But if you're not aware, because you think, I've been looking really concerned, and actually you look as if you're about to do something unspeakable and illegal to them because you're not aware of what your face is doing. It's those things, the tone of voice, the way in which you speak. So there are principally three types of people, for instance, when you're speaking with an audience will have three types of listeners. There'll be the sort of fast and furious and like me, I can speak pretty fast when I get going. You get nice and normal. Then you got the sort of the slow people who like people who speak slowly in a considered way. And the slow people can't necessarily put up with for too long the fast and the furious, and vice versa, in very simplistic terms. So it's being aware of that, but thinking, what's the outcome you want? And how can they walk away with enough dignity, and you too?
Yeah.
But it's better to be honest, and it may be awkward. Honesty is such, but pleasant honesty. And looking them in the eye as well. And like you care, but you say, look, we're different in this regard. People hopefully should do it in relationships every day, with friends and certainly their partners. And it should be the same in business. But of course, people don't. And that's where problems arise. If you think about the things that don't happen, that will happen if you don't have that honest conversation in the right way, at the right time, then yeah, it will be challenging. So
Excellent.
Having the courage.
Yeah,
to do
good.
this.
Good, thank you. So we haven't got long left, but what have you learned about setting up a watch business in a business in a very crowded marketplace, competitive marketplace? What have you learned so far?
Good question. So various things. One, you do your research and you do diligence beforehand, but you actually get into the business and you realize how much you still didn't know. And if I was going to do things differently, if I doing it again, I would join certain watch groups, organizations, and talk to even more people, sort of watch owner, business owners and others. Probably have gone to some events and stuff like that. It's a different dynamic when you're in the business because people are more likely to engage with you. So I would have, that's one thing I've learned. There's always more to learn. And I did a lot of research and really thought it through, and then reality hits. You think, oh yeah, there's more, which is part and parcel of life as it is in business. The other thing in terms of the watch business is how can we stand out? And in terms of the colors, the way our watches are made, we've got this, for our Manta dial watches, this beautiful 3D guilloche style dials, and there is more color in our watches, color coded like straps, dial rings, emblem top crowns, and we just, it's more striking, and people say there's nothing like it on the market, so I knew it'd be different. But the big challenge is marketing, how you stand out. And if your watch is going to cost £1,000, £1,500, because ours have Swiss movements and they are fully custom made, it doesn't matter how beautiful they are. People think, and I've had some people, actually, I'd like to see the watch in person, which is fair enough, and the website's very informative. But also they want to find out who I am and what the motivation is. Who's the person behind the brand? And if they're spending 4 figures, they want to know that. And it's how you market as well. So that's the challenge, because it is a crowded market, how you stand out. So I've got a social media marketing campaign. It started a week ago. And doing that, and just finished a Google ad campaign test. So assessing that, it's been interesting, got some data, but also it's forming the relationships with the right media, with influencers. And, I happen to know Esquire's Influencer of the Year, and he's an amazing individual, very engaging, dynamic, and outrageously handsome, and very stylish. And he gets invited to all sorts of sprawlsy events. And he called me up on one Friday before a big event, a watch fair to go to, and he said, Seán, I've been invited to Selton Johns this year, Oscar party. I want to wear your red version of your Manta watch, type watch. I went, it's coming. When are you going there? And he went, tomorrow morning from London. He lives in Bristol. I went, okay. So I need to go for a meeting. I made the meeting with literally 30 seconds to spare. It was a really important meeting. And the same day courier, I was rushing like a blue-ass fly, getting the packaging, trying to start same day courier. And then, anyway, got it there. It was great. And he's a great supporter, but he really loves the watch, but he loves what the brand is about. And sometimes it's having those conversations, not being afraid to have those, but it's just keep on talking, and that marketing. So you find out, and I've got to say, I've met some really lovely people in terms of the microband watch industry and the independents who've been really helpful. But part of it is down to how they relate to you as a person and how warm and open you are to them, appreciative of what they do, their product, but also appreciative of the help they give you, which I am. So to those who've been really helpful and supportive, it's made my life a lot easier because of the relationships I built with them. And that's a key thing. And that is a part of the marketing, because they say, well, actually, don't do this for these reasons, but do try that. And you think, that could save me thousands or more. So that's marketing. And it's getting known, and it's slowly building it up. And the other thing I've realized as well, Kevin, is that, I'm so pretty driven. I am driven. But it's being realistic about your timelines in terms of how long it will take to get traction and enough traction. And so I've had to readjust my the way I see that as well, which is a good thing.
Yeah, good. And you mentioned right back almost at the beginning about how difficult pricing was, that decision. Take us through some of your thinking around the pricing. You mentioned they're £1,000 and they're all Swiss workings.
Yeah.
Take us through some of your thinking.
Initially, I was advised that I should be charging. So our man-to-die watches retail at $1,295, so $1,295, including VAT, shipping, and love and attention. And initially, they're worth $2,500. Should be charging at least $2,500. Well, because of the way they're made and because they're so different, as well as the cause behind them, great. But I'm an unknown brand, and I was doing my research, and I thought, I'm not sure about this. And I started talking to other brand owners and all the rest of it, discovering new watches, and I did my research and started going to watch events and collectors clubs and stuff like that. And I started getting feedback. And they went, when they first saw the watch, one group went, wow, they went, that's stunning, beautiful. And then I listened to what they said about pricing, and because I'm a new brand, I have to, and I look at my competitors, the market I'm in, then I've had to put it down. So it's an interesting one, because if it's under £1,000, you think, is it really quality enough? If it's over £1,000, which is more of a considered spend, some people are getting quality, but not so far over, particularly if you're a new brand, like, who the hell are you? Why should we invest that? If you're an established brand, yes. And so I put a big thing out last night and saying, look, it's new pricing, you're part of the community, so you're the only one's been told about it directly, and got it one sale from that at least, so which is great. Hence the pinging noise while I was cleaning up after breakfast, that ka-ching noise.
Yeah.
But it's again, it's about experimenting, but not so wildly. People think, well, what are these guys doing? So you want to give the right impression. Somebody see, oh, I love it, there's too much. Even though you've talked about the quality and the story behind it, and you see pictures and videos and there's detail. Yes, but we don't know you. And so you need those who have faith, and you maybe put in the odd, the sweetness. If somebody signs up, they get 10% off. They have a code once they sign up, get into our community, blah, blah, blah. And obviously events is a bit more off, but it's only relevant for that event. And you just listen very carefully, and you can't do it with your ego. Probably, oh my God, I overpriced, or have I? Well, underpricing. And so I'm not sure, Kevin, I'm not saying I've necessarily got it right per se, but it's hopefully I'm in a much better place than I was, because maybe even though it's a great product, extra £200 might think, if it's 495, it's under 1.5, but 12 prime sounds better. Give me 10% off. Yes, I think I might buy one, which is great. But it's testing, as you know so well, and your listeners know, so it's about testing. But pricing is a nightmare, and I'm not sure I have people talk about increased value, but the value will become, in terms of the watch business, my watch business, or the watch business generally, in terms of how they feel when they wear it, how people feel about them, as well as I hope once I can get across even more the charitable element, then that's a different type of value. But in terms of, look, we'll throw in a spare strap, maybe, but actually people just really want the watch. And also 95% of people generally buy luxury watches are men. It's our form of jewelry, it's a real male thing. Although the first person to buy the watch was a man for his wife, not for him, for his wife. And she saw a watch at an event and went, I don't see anything else, I'm done here. That's the one for me.
Oh, wow.
Sky blue one, yeah. And women love that. It's like a Tiffany blue. It's a beautiful color, but it's... So yeah, the pricing I'll have to let you know, because it's still very new, because I only got the watches about 6 weeks ago, the ones that I could sell to people. So it's still very new, and it's great to get some customers and all the rest of it, and some great media reviews. But it's work in progress. And don't get me wrong, I'll be honest. It may make it sound like everything's going swimmingly. And yes, it's nice when you hear a ka-ching, whatever you're doing, or several ka-chings, or many ka-chings. But I still sometimes get that, which your listeners will understand, that doubt, that self-doubt, thinking, I've done the research and data, but sometimes you have to take a rough guess, but it's a calculated guess, but it's not a definitive decision. It's not necessarily based on the definitive outcomes. You don't know until you do it. And I have moments where I think, oh God, am I doing the right thing? I should be doing this, should be doing that. And so one of the things I think is really important, and I'm trying to find, and I've found one or two people in the watch industry, but it'd be good to have others as well, is a mastermind group. That's one thing I really need in my work life. And I think it's good for anyone, where you complement each other professionally, but also just as importantly, personally. And that's one thing I really do need and I'm looking for in my life. So you can get on really well, but there's that trust there, but you help each other. And when things are tough, you can support each other and you celebrate successes.
Yeah.
But more likely to be successful because of the way you encourage other personally, but also professionally. And that's one of the best bits of advice for any entrepreneur or business owner. If you haven't already, I'm sure there's quite a few do, but those who don't, when you find them, you're onto a good thing. But they've got to be the right people. And one people say, oh, you should be a part of this group. And I'm thinking, I'm not sure it's right for where I am, my business, and necessarily me. And sometimes you see some of the people involved, you think, no way.
Yeah.
just not for me. And probably maybe not for them. And but having a mastermind group
absolutely
is crucial. And that's one thing I'm lacking in my entrepreneurial business life, which I'm trying to change. So.
Okay, very good. Well, I know we could carry on talking at least for another hour, Sean.
In an unferal way, yes.
Probably should wrap it up. So, if we're having this conversation in another 5 years' time, what does success look like then for you? Have you got to the 1 million children that you've supported by then?
That would be brilliant, or at least halfway there. I think I'd obviously have a whole stack of. So success looks like for me. So. I have enough money if I could, retire lavishly and wonderfully. Though I don't need bling, but then I would also want to keep the business. So somebody said, "Will you sell any of your businesses?" I could sell that. But this is what I wouldn't want to sell because of the legacy element, because of the charitable element. And I really enjoy the watch industry. I love watches. I love what the brand is about, who it's named after, and it really resonates with me emotionally. And so for me, the business will be bigger. I will have a core team who will be running it. Maybe have some boutique bricks and mortar locations in different parts of the world. The number in 5 years' time, hopefully, 20, if not 30% of the profits, rather than 10% will be given to the charities we support. There might even be a foundation by that point, and it'll be doing some good in the world. And I will spend more time with the youngsters and the children that the charities we're contributing to are helping, almost than I do in the watch business. And that's, I think I'd like, and a business where it's still being run from anywhere in the world. I have a great team, and personally, I'm in a financially good place. Emotionally, personally, in terms of the business, spiritually, I'm in a good place because it's running well. Yes, there'll be challenges and setbacks, everything else, but that's what I want. That's where that success would be for me. And I feel reconciled with who I am and where I am, truly reconciled. Notwithstanding we have the challenges and the ups and downs and the pleasures as well as the privations of life that we have to enjoy and endure respectively. So that's...
And what do you think is the biggest thing that might get in the way of getting there?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. There could be a few things. One, not recruiting the right people at the right times to help take the business to other levels, better levels. Not that I hope this would ever happen with any business I'm in, but not listening enough to the customers and understanding the market and how it evolves. And 3, if any more horrendous dictators start invading other countries and we get World War III, which could put a dampener on things, Yeah. And I know there's almost elements of levity there, but actually that does concern people. That is having an impact, geopolitically, obviously, and economically and psychologically on people. And so, we live in perilous times, and which does have a knock-on effect economically, psychologically, and politically. So but hopefully that third one won't happen. But I think it's and being and evolving, even though there's a vision, evolving in the right way with the right people, and building in the right way, for sure. So
excellent. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed having you on as a guest, Seán. If people listening would like to get hold of you or find out more about Edward Christopher, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, go to the website, which is edwardchristopher.com, and email us support@edwardchristopher.com, but it's all there. They also have a form you can, like a contact form as well. And so, there's edwardchristopher.com. I'll give you the contact details and everything you need, and that would be a great way to reach out, and nothing expected. And I'm on LinkedIn as well, so that's another way of reaching out. And obviously the business on Instagram, but on a professional, personal level, if people want to reach out. So, for instance, if somebody thought, do you know what, he may like too much cake, he's a bit random, and apparently he was just below feral. He's not much wild, but very wild. I think it's the sort of guy I could be in a mastermind group with. I would love that, and have that conversation, whether or not it leads to something for us together or separately, we help each other. That would be great as well.
Fantastic. Sure. Thank you very much. So Seán Brickell, thank you very much indeed for being my guest on ScaleUp Radio today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.